Hello, everyone. Welcome to Soka University of America, Arie Gallus, The Breaking of the Vessels. It is my great pleasure to introduce Arie Gallus, Emeritus Professor of Art and Artist in Residence at Soka University. A mentor, colleague, and friend, Arie is treasured by so many at Soka and beyond. The ability to share conversation with such a brilliant, thoughtful, insightful, and passionate artist provides tremendous and continued value to all of us. A man who is no stranger to the myriad of experience humankind traverses, Arie contributes meaningfully to the protective crust around the earth, one we all need. To see one another fully requires we participate in acts of empathizing, of sharing with others. Drawing is an immediate and visceral act of thinking, empathizing, and sharing. The act of drawing can provide freedom from disturbance, provide tranquility for both maker and viewer. Arie received his MFA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and BFA from Tyler School of Fine Arts of Temple University. Arie has participated in numerous local, national, and international exhibitions. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Arie Gallus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel I'm competing with the State of the Union, but maybe some of you people will turn on to this. This might be a little bit more interesting, but that's only my suggestion. I would like to welcome you to this particular lecture on a project that I started last year. And I'm going to start by, 1 second. Okay. I'm going to start with the first. Okay, what it is the title, Shevirat Kelim, The Breaking of the Vessels, an old Kabalistic system of thinking and so on about the creation and so forth of the universe. So what I did, 1 second. So I took the opportunity to write a little bit of a statement. Breaking of the Vessels is an ancient Kabbalistic rumination about creation. It endeavors to explain both creation and the origin of evil. The premise of this exegesis is that the omnipresent God contractor, making space and sending into the emptiness a ray of light to initiate the act of creation. Vessels, symbolizing the harmony of the universe, were intended to catch that light. 7 of the 10 vessels shattered, unable to contain the powerful luminescence. By repairing the vessels in thought and deed, humanity can receive the opportunity to choose between good and evil and thereby repair the world. In Hebrew, it's called Tikkun Olam. What I will do is I'll present you first with a first survey of my drawings, early black and white drawings, as opposed to my color work and so forth. And ideas, when they work out and you think about what you're going to draw and how, there's no celestial choir that somehow gets you this inspiration. It appears to be work and thinking and sometimes making mistakes and changing back and forth. So this is some of the works, really. This is quite, I was probably still in high school when I did that. And what drawing can change, this is actually a pretty polluted North Canal in the city of Chicago. And I was there in the winter and there was somebody fishing for crabs or something in there. And this kind of a dreary gray thing could be converted by the vision of the artist and the penmanship or whatever you want to call it to something that really struck me as being quite beautiful. I use this technique with my ink and so on to show some aspects here when I was visiting my cousins in Brooklyn, Borough Park. This is a sketch for a painting which is lost and I have no idea where. It was a crucifixion I painted when I lived in Italy in '66, and there was one of the thieves yelling, "Where is your God now?" And you, the viewer, are supposed to be the second one to whom Jesus said some very, very powerful and kind words. As I kept evolving my technique in drawing, I went off in quite a few number of years in rather almost surrealistic way. And I loved light. And, you know, some of you who know my work from before know that I really do work with light. And I experiment with different techniques that are working. I experimented with, you know, very simplistic forms and gesture, Cy Twombly, and my friend Richard Aschbacher. I did this painting as an homage to him. And this is sort of an imaginary way of a fisheye view of a landscape. It's called a nosedive. Uh, I love the American landscapes and the lines, and I kept the grid. So I really want you to understand that the works that will follow do have a grid. This is one of my drawings when it's called the Wehrmacht's first act on September 1st, 1939, when they broke the border and attacked Poland, country where my parents were living at that time. This is a 4 by 6 foot charcoal drawing based upon aerial photography showing the Auschwitz II by 14 stations, Hegel Dalit. And it deals also with the vision from above and not dwelling upon the horrors of what I intend actually existed in there. But it's kind of interesting that any kind of horrible thing exists in a world which is not bastion. It's just there. It looks like a big development, which unfortunately it was for killing people. And that's Buchenwald, another concentration camp where my cousin was interned. And this is actually a Ravensbrück female camp. In 2000, while clearing a gutter, I fell and I broke my humerus in my right hand. And I had to learn to write and draw with my left hand. And this is a series of drawings based upon the x-rays as my arm was healing. This is a drawing I did of my mom a couple of years before she passed on. I was kind of surprised when I did that drawing because I sort of do all abstracts, and I was surprised I actually could draw something realistically and spontaneously. Followed by a series of drawings, different techniques. This is moon fields, which I just use gesture, simple and geometric shapes, and erasers. The next part of the same series of graphite was an exercise for myself to use only graphite, powdered graphite, and eraser, not any other pencils and so on. And the third one was this other set of drawings, each one 20 drawings. I'm just showing you a number of them. And this was, again, an assignment, this beautiful pepper tree that fell down and regrew itself. But here my assignment was not to use the eraser at all and just keep working until the thing is finished. So that gives you a little bit of a background on certain ways that I was working. Here, I did a series for an exhibition about the Nazi doctors working in the different camps and the Hippocratic Oath. And this is actually, I copied the Hippocrates' oath in the ancient Greek, and I cut 1-inch strips out of them, each one by erasing them partially. And that sort of made it look like the clothes of the garb of the prisoners. And I went through the whole system. This was a triptych. And if you look at it carefully, you notice that the black and white lines move across from left to right to just show that. And by the time that it covered and eliminated the Hippocratic Oath, which the doctors were swore to maintain. And a series of fantasy drawings of California landscapes from above. This was a series of orchards. This is pretty high, actually. It's about 7 feet by about 3 feet, I think, of Kansas. I did a whole bunch of. I'm showing you those works actually to know that I'm using the grid of the fields as a sort of a formalistic concept in creating what I'm going to be working with now. And I also did a thing about Spinoza, which one of my colleagues here, Oleg Galtman, posed for the hands. It's a letter of Spinoza, and it says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim. It means in the beginning God created in heaven and earth. It deals a lot with the philosophical aspects of God not being a old guy sitting there, but some kind of a force of the universe. And I did also another series of Injustice a couple of years ago, which just shows you the broken scale of justice. It's sort of suspended, it's suspended in the celestial sphere, but it is broken. Things are falling apart. And here, the breaking of the vessels. This is my suite. It was inspired by having looked at the works that my friend, Douglas Rosenberg, University of Wisconsin, did a whole series of very, very powerful, I think, and sensual clay pieces on actual vessels. And that inspired me to sort of see if something I can say about the same topic. There were many artists who spoke about this and who did work about this particular thing, and Kiefer did in Germany very large pieces, the breaking of the vessels. But I tried to sort of figure out how to deal with this project on a completely different level. And I sometimes start from the beginning of the completed project. Now, those three are the completed project. It started as 10 vessels, and I finished the first one. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, I already said a lot of things in that one, so maybe it should be only 6 pieces. Then I finished the second one, the one in the middle, and it started answering questions that I was looking for. And I said, no, it only needs one more piece, and it became a triptych. It's not because I felt like I'm going to save paper or save myself a lot of work. It's just simply that sometimes the works themselves tell you that they are finished and you're saying what you wanted to say. So what I did, this is a series I'm working on in color, and I took those pieces from my wall and I looked at them, and from them, each one of those little circles of crop circles and so on are little universes in their own. And the concept of it was to create a feeling of complete darkness, as it says in Genesis, and then have a grid and have some shapes murking or lurking in there, and then slowly the grid being broken up by the light that's coming in through the cracks, and the cracks being actually the grid. So I started the first drawing, and I'm going here through the process. Is I usually put in the grid in with charcoal, mark it out, then I put different kind of shading in it and so forth. This one actually has intensity to it that I've added as it progressed. And then I wipe it out. I totally wipe it out, and then I start pulling out of the darkness. I start pulling out the shapes. Now, I don't know what the meanings of the shapes there are, but there are little kind of earths or universes that you want to create that exist within this kind of a grid. And it sort of grows. And then once I finish the erasure process, I start adding more charcoal, and now keeping the grids, they switch from being black to being white lines. And I crawl again from the right to the left, simply because this way I don't smudge the images I'm drawing. And here you see something that gets to be a little bit more, live and so on. Shapes become very distinct, but that's not really where I wanted to go with it. So the next stage, I started darkening. And once you put in the white line with white content, things naturally start being darker. So what it is here is that you're looking at it. This is the final version. And there's much more detail of it. And so what it is now is there's a grid created by light trying to break in from each one of those little universes. And those things appear to be moving or spinning or containing all kinds of nuclei in it. And for my second drawing is I started another grid. But if you notice in the grid now, there's some free flowing lines. I started thinking about all kinds of concepts like string theory and freedom and movement and so forth. And I borrowed shapes from other of my drawings, as you notice, but I've changed it in a certain level. Then I went and I put in the basic charcoal. I smudge it. It becomes sort of mysterious. Then I start pulling out the areas with an eraser. And that sort of changes things because I change shape. Doesn't matter what the original shape was. I keep changing those things as all of you who have done, drawing or painting or have been writers or musicians, composers, etc. You know that the idea in your head is not necessarily the one that you wind up with, even though you thought you heard something very clearly in your head, you're hearing something else different once the work of art is being created. The same thing here. I had ideas, but those ideas kept changing because the works kept changing me. And you notice that in the center left, you start seeing some of those little twisty lines of the strings appearing, the string theory appearing. And then, of course, I go in and strengthen all those areas, strengthen the dark areas. And this is what it wound up. So I have some of those things that white light is beginning to break through, separating the different kind of universes. And it's got shapes within shapes and wheels within wheels. And there is a kind of an energy into it. And that string and gesture, which is a total non-grid, came to be. And the third one, which was my finished final one, I don't know where to begin. So I started. And I again created a grid and I put the various colored, the shapes in there, and then literally went haphazardly bananas with my gestures, where I just kept drawing strings and a few of them just angular, mostly kind of fluid strings coming in and out, coming in, interlinking, crossing, a lot of things happening in there. And I didn't know where I'm going to go with this. So I did what I always do. I put in the charcoal and tried to create a different shape so I can wipe it off. My mistake was I used the wrong charcoal. Don't ask me how it happened because I'm unaware of that thing, absolutely unaware of it. I just picked up a charcoal that was nearest to me and it wasn't the right charcoal, it was vine charcoal. And I went and I erased the drawing, all the work that I put in. And that's what happened. So some of the lines stay there and then I had to start rebuilding it. The phrase that people use, back to the drawing board, most of people who are artists know that very well. That no matter how much you plan, no matter what you do, no matter how many years, and I'm ending my 7th decade of life, still this kind of a haphazard mistake did happen. But what you do is you go back to the drawing board and you start working. So I started picking out with the eraser, wherever there was the black line, I changed it to light lines. I then started tested on the right-hand side to see if I could create some mystery in there with different kind of shapes. And then I started drawing it in and filling it in. So once that thing in, you see, it's been filled in right now. I have an idea of strings and grid that somehow subliminally stays there. Some of the lines are straight and most of the lines are curved. It's a play of motion and so on, of twisting, of sort of regulated chaos, I would say, because there is an order to this kind of a chaos. And then I started using white contact to really create this luminescence. Now, what happened is, in the initial aspect, I made those lines look like they were light breaking through the background of darkness. The vessel is breaking and the light is coming through. And also, if you know about the technical aspects of white contact on charcoal, once you spray the fixative on it, it almost disappears. So you have to keep building up the areas. And the ruminations about what I felt stronger and stronger about the thing here that is starting to work. It wasn't what I saw in my original vision of it, but I did see that light was breaking the whole thing. I had to make it dark first. I had to make it sort of invisible in a way in the darkness, and then the light would start breaking through. So the whole drawing came through that way. And then this is actually the final version of this suite, where every contact point where two lines would cross each other became a point of breakout of the light. And it looks like little things within that form created little stars or maybe little universes. It answered to me a question of that kind of a haphazard thing, but at the same time, a rather beautiful cobweb or beautiful web of interacting shapes and interacting universes, interacting lives, or different kind of aspects of existence. I'm not a philosopher, but it does take you some time when you're looking at your own work. It's not something, this work took months, but it looks like I'm telling it to you just in a few minutes. But every gesture, some of them came spontaneously, but every gesture had to be thought out and had to figure out what am I seeing here myself. And I finished. So what's amazing is I finished it on my birthday on October 29 in 1923. And then 2 days later at home, I opened up, it was a Tuesday, and it's a science time. They had a New York Times had a spread on a visualization of new theories about galaxies and so on. And this was the first picture, and I said, "Oh my God, those are galaxies that they sort of put in as on a grid in here, which is sort of similar to my grid." And it has the kind of luminosity that I was, thinking evolving in my brain, but this is something based upon powerful telescopes doing it and just putting them in such a grid. And so it reminded me of this and that. So I have a grid here on the first one that comes back and forth to me. That something I thought about is actually being repeated in actual physical space that big telescopes can see. And then the next picture really flowed me. And I don't know what it is, whether it's a movement of stars or whether it's one star being followed but whatever it was, it had those same kind of gestures that spontaneously I came up with. And what really almost took my conscious breath away is the little spots of brightness that those lines came in there when they touch each other in crossing. And I thought about it, this is what I came up with, and this is what science shows you. And artists usually regard science as something that maybe it's not appropriate, and scientists might regard art as something not appropriate. I don't see any differences in the process of creative thinking between trying to understand the mysteries of the universe on a gigantic universal level and trying to understand the mysteries of human thought on a smaller level, just when you're sitting there and ruminating. You know, so when I'm looking at this, I was actually very happy with it. I actually felt that something happened here to me to understand it in this strife riddled world. There are bigger pictures. There's existence, there's life, and personally, there's accomplishment, and there could be even joy that you can do it. And something that might be so convoluted, we can still see the beauty in it and try to recreate a certain original beauty. So when I'm looking through one, the first one to the second one to the third one, and I come up with this triptych, I look at him. And what is, I think, something very important for artists is not only that you spend time and psychic energy and whatever it is that is in creating your work of art, that you do not spoon feed people what they are supposed to think. You create an image that means something to you, and people can draw their own conclusions from there. People can put their own emotions into it, their own worldviews, and so on. Because every society, humanity has a sort of Genesis kind of creationist story. Everybody in every society is trying to figure out what is right, what is wrong, trying to figure out where you came from, where you're going, how limited your universe is, whether it's you know, a world being supported by 4 elephants standing on a turtle, or the little tiny blue dot that we saw when we first landed on the moon, when you look back onto the Earth. The universe is very big. The Earth is very, very, very tiny, and we are even tinier yet. And yet, within even that kind of a respect of life and so on, we're creating problems that maybe they're universal. I don't know if there's a solution to any of that. Maybe in other worlds, the same kind of problems exist. But I think humanity always tried to figure out what and where. And maybe the answer here is that a certain kind of a beauty, and again, beauty can not be decided exactly in the same way by everybody. I mean, how can I say it? I didn't choose to be born from my parents. I didn't choose to be born in Central Asia. I didn't choose to be, I just happened to be here. And I don't think I'm any way different or unique than any other human being or living creature from, the tiniest mote to dinosaur, which have figured out why you exist here. But humanity has been trying to solve that kind of a puzzle for themselves, and all kinds of scholars think about it. But I think humanity came up in one way or another with this thing that something is broken. And that thing, something is broken, can only be fixed by what we can do. Whether we can really finish the world of completion or repair, I'm not certain. Whether we are powerful enough to do that, I don't know either. All I know is that as a human being, as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, as a colleague, as an artist, and maybe sometimes a total idiot. My part of in this whole gigantic picture is to try to create some aspects of beauty and let people draw their own conclusions of what and how, is that the definitive way of looking at the universe? No. This is my way at this time to look at it this way. It is my way to answer some questions that I have. And you know something, tomorrow I might have different questions and I might find that this is not really answering it. Or I might go on to another section of works and I'm doing something not totally in very bright color, just the total opposite of that. But artists, I don't think an artist is an idiot savant. It's not just something that happens because intuition or genetic procreation for it and so forth. I think anybody has the ability to look, especially in the time just before you fall asleep, when the person is basically the most with themselves, just to achieve the kind of a peace that actually makes you fall asleep and then wake up is the kind of peace that should not be only offered to people when they cease existing. It should be a peace that we can see and try to establish here by ourselves. I want to thank you all for listening to my presentation. And if you are interested in more about my works and creative career, please visit my website. And you can ruminate about it. You can go into it. And I don't want to take up more of your time right now, but I'm definitely open for questions and comments. So thank you again. And I open up to your questions.
Hi,
Hi.
Arie. Thank you. That was wonderful. And I was wondering, when you showed them after taking us through your process, which was so fascinating, including the last one with picking up the wrong charcoal, what a happy accident in the end, I think. And part of the great parts of creative process, how those things lead to something else. I was wondering, when looking at those three drawings, if you have a particular favorite, and if you might see the transition that happened between the three, is there a suggestion inside of you now to go somewhere new from having gone through that? That last one in particular seemed especially a new direction.
I think I've discussed it with other people, not that particular piece, but basically my artwork. Okay, is that people felt that maybe I'm confining myself too much to the grid for the last say 10, 15 years. That maybe the grid, I use it as a crutch. Maybe I have no idea. I just like the original organic aspects of the earth, and then humanity cuts everything into grids. So I kind of like that freedom of the third one very much, where I allowed my hand to just swing freely through it and just making infinity curlicues or whatever you want to call it. And it was rather liberating for me. That I was able to go through and eradicate or go right through the grid without completely losing it, but allowing to create connections which I would not have seen no matter how well I would have created any little area within a grid. I think that sort of opened up, I think, the next step that I'm working in now, because the next series, which is going to be, I think, on April 7th or 4th, I don't remember, it's going to be announced, is I did a whole series of drawings in color pencil and actually wax pencil, which is a whole new material for me. And it did start with a grid, but it allowed me to create completely different textures on that. And I think that the third one was really an answer to it, where I sort of abandoned the kind of control that I always had, what I wanted to show, and allowed the drawings to just sort of exist to it. So it's not that, you know, when I mentioned that it's a cobweb, I didn't mean in a cobweb that there's a spider waiting there. You know, I meant it's sort of a beautiful filigree of the universe. You know, that when I saw it, you know, it's luminescent lights at the party. It's just, it has its own beauty, and if you focus on any single line, you can keep looking at it and focusing, having a different response to almost every. So if you ask what my favorite of those three, definitely the third one. Yes.
Yeah. And those crisscross, those points of contact were beautiful. Yeah.
It's my old experience when I stayed in my mentor and at the Tyler School of Art, Carl Fernbach Flarsheim. I stayed in his house because I had no place to live. He let me live in the attic. And there was only one light bulb, and I tried to put some more lights in there. So I rewired it completely. And Carl Fernbach Flarsheim was down in the basement and yelling, "Is it okay? Is it okay?" And I wired it, right? And I said, "Okay, it's ready to go." And he, put the fuse in, and the thing exploded. Why? Because I came from Europe and I wired it for a DC current, not an AC. So there were sparks. I'm glad that he survived and everything is there. But it's one of those incidents that you do happen. You get out of a car and you get a shock, right? You pet your cat, you get a certain kind of a shock to it. I'm talking about that. And those sparks are really amazing. And I have to admit that sometimes, they're rare, but it does happen enough that I can close my eyes and going to sleep, and there's all kinds of sparkles happening. And that might be something wrong with my eyes or whatever, but it is not an unpleasant sensation. And and I like that the meeting creates something. You could transfer that to people too, that we sort of circle and so on, and arbitrarily we happen to meet in the corner or in the middle of a place or in a plane or whatever. And you never know what it leads you to. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just saying bravo, Arie. I have enjoyed your art for so many years, being your neighbor across the divide. Thank you for sharing your story. I really loved how you took us through the whole history of your artistry. I had not known that side of you. And so now I really understand how you evolved to where you are now. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. I sometimes don't know how I evolved into anything, except when I look in the mirror, I don't know what happened to that smooth-skinned, red-bearded guy, But you know what? This October, I'll be turning 80, and I thank God or Providence or whatever that be, that I can still think clearly and still enjoy life and still be able to go down to the studio, whether here at the university or down right across the big divide. What Patty is talking about, by the way, the big divide is here is that she lives across about 110 yards away from our house, and there were 10 buildings in between. And in 1998, they all slid down because of greedy developers who built something that they were told is a slide area, and 10 houses slipped down. So now nothing can be built there. And so I think one of the few places in California, in this area of Southern California, that my next door neighbor is 110 yards away. But spiritually, no, we're friends. So that's something else. Thank you. It's always at this time when people trying, if anybody has any comments or
Praise.
Yeah, my wife said any comments. I said she says praise. No, but I really so I don't want to gild the lily. It's a presentation of something that I felt very strongly about, and you're talking about the original thing from the Kabbalah, which and all kinds of other things, that people have thought over centuries and argued about and discussed it and so on, and trying to reach the truth or whatever, and having their various theories of what it is and discussions and arguments and cooperations and so forth. It's never going to stop, which is the good part about being a human being. I have opinions, some of them very strong, but my opinions change sometimes 10 times during one day. And the best thing is to be aware that you should spend your life doing, and I'm lucky to have that I've spent my life doing what I love doing. And for more than half of my life, I spent it with Sarah, which is even luckier than that. And I think all of it is like that. It's that you have the time. It's, creating sometimes, you can solve more things than that. And I also don't believe in certain kind of propaganda. That I don't spoon feed people what they should think or what my opinion is. I present an image of my ruminations or whatever technical skill is involved, and let people react to it. And and by the way, if I don't get any more questions and so on, that reaction cannot happen now. That must not happen now. You might have the reaction 2 days from now or a month from now saying, boy, that was great, or that stupid idiot, what did he do? I mean, whichever way you want to go with it. I know that it was surprising to me. I know that it was rewarding for me. I hope in some way in taking this kind of a incentive, also, as I told you, like some artists are afraid to praise other artists or claim or allow the fact that they inspired you. But Douglas did inspire me. I looked at his video. He's also a performance artist, and I looked at the video of those clay pieces, and Judy, you look at your pieces and so forth. Yeah, I look at other works of other artists. I'm extremely happy to praise them. I'm extremely happy to when I see something that's beautiful, not to be jealous, just to be inspired. And I think that's what happened here. I saw something which I felt was very strong personal interpretation of the Shevirat Kelim, the breaking the vessels and all the other things, to create some kind of vessels, which it's not something that I would do as that person did, but I can appreciate that person's inner thinking, at least the way I perceive it, that somebody did something very important and meaningful to them, and that inspired me to deal with this and create this series of works.